The gates of Angola. The first thing you notice about Angola is the silence. It's not peaceful. It's the heavy, suffocating kind that hangs over the Mississippi River Valley like fog. The Louisiana State Penitentiary, known simply as Angola, sits on 18,000 acres of land that once belonged to a cotton plantation. The soil is still red, the air still thick with the weight of history. Long before it became the largest maximum security prison in America, it was a plantation where enslaved Africans toiled and died. When the prison was established in the late 19th century, the labor never stopped, only the uniforms changed. By the 1970s, Angola had earned a reputation as the bloodiest prison in America. Inmates worked 12-hour days in the burning sun, picking cotton and sugarcane under armed guard. Reports of rape, violence, and murder were routine. Guards looked the other way, or worse, they participated. Many of the prisoners were poor, black, and serving life sentences under Louisiana's harsh sentencing laws. Once you entered Angola, you were expected to die there. One of those men was Herman Wallace, convicted in 1971 for armed robbery, and later accused of murdering a prison guard. Wallace always maintained his innocence. Along with Albert Woodfox and Robert King, he became part of what the media later called the Angola Three. These men spent decades in solitary confinement, locked in 6-by-9-foot cells for 23 hours a day. Their crime? Speaking out against the abuse. They organized hunger strikes, taught other inmates their rights, and dared to demand justice in a place where justice had no name. Inside Angola, silence was enforced not just by bars, but by fear. Prisoners who resisted were dragged from their cells and thrown into the dungeon, a dark isolation block where the lights never went off, and the screams of others became a constant soundtrack. Some guards, former soldiers themselves, treated Angola like a battlefield. One whistleblower later described it as a world built on control, fear, and obedience, where human dignity was contraband. Outside the walls, the public knew almost nothing. The warden, Burl Kane, a man who publicly spoke of Christian reform, allowed journalists limited access. Kane often told visitors that Angola was a model prison, a place of redemption. He showed them inmate-run churches, rodeos, and workshops. Cameras captured smiling guards and inmates praying side by side. But the truth lay buried behind closed doors and sealed reports. In 2005, a civil rights group managed to interview former guards who revealed a darker story. They spoke about correctional squads, special teams that carried out beatings under the guise of discipline. Some admitted to falsifying incident reports to cover up excessive force. Others confessed to witnessing men collapse in the fields from heat exhaustion, only to be punished for refusing to work. The line between punishment and cruelty had long vanished. The Angola Three's legal battle brought new attention to the prison's hidden horrors. In 2013, after more than 40 years in solitary, Herman Wallace was released when his conviction was overturned. He died 3 days later, a free man for less than a week. His case reignited the debate over the use of long-term solitary confinement in America, a practice many human rights organizations call torture. As journalists and lawyers dug deeper, more secrets began to unravel. They uncovered decades of suppressed medical records, ignored complaints, and systemic cover-ups. A 2015 investigation revealed that inmates were being paid as little as 2 cents an hour for grueling labor, producing crops and products sold for profit. Angola, it turned out, was not just a prison, it was an industry. And yet, for those still inside, speaking the truth came at a price. One former inmate, who agreed to be interviewed only under anonymity, said, "If you talked, they'd make you disappear. Not kill you. Just bury you alive in a cell so small you'd forget what sunlight looked like." He described guards who used intimidation tactics, denied medical care, and punished anyone caught talking to the media. Angola was built to break men, and it succeeded more often than it failed. The story of Angola is not one of redemption, but of exposure, of what happens when a system grows too powerful to be questioned. It is the story of human beings turned into labor, truth turned into silence, and punishment turned into profit. Yet even within those blood-stained walls, men like Wallace, Woodfox, and King proved that resistance could survive. They wrote letters, smuggled out testimonies, and forced the world to look inside a place designed to stay hidden. By the time the nation finally began to listen, the damage was done. Angola had already become a symbol, not just of cruelty, but of America's deepest contradiction, the belief in freedom built on the backs of the imprisoned. And as Chapter 1 closes, the gates of Angola remain open, its secrets still echoing through the lives of those who never made it out, the whistleblowers. When Herman Wallace passed away in 2013, his story ignited a fire that the Louisiana Department of Corrections could no longer smother. Journalists, lawyers, and civil rights organizations turned their eyes toward Angola. What they uncovered was not a relic of the past, but a machine that still thrived on silence and exploitation. The prison, built on a former slave plantation, continued to operate under a system eerily similar to its origins: mass incarceration feeding forced labor. The spark came from within. In 2014, a group of correctional officers quietly began leaking information to advocacy groups. One of them, a veteran guard named Jeffrey Ford, later testified that he had witnessed organized brutality against inmates who filed grievances. He described how supervisors ordered beatings in the fields, punishments disguised as discipline. If an inmate spoke out, we were told to make an example. Ford confessed in a sworn affidavit. The unspoken rule was, fear keeps them quiet. When the story broke in local media, Angola's administration scrambled to control the narrative. Officials insisted that isolated incidents were being exaggerated, but documents told another story. Medical records showing untreated injuries, disciplinary logs missing signatures, and internal memos warning guards not to talk to investigators. Behind the polished public image, Angola was still running on intimidation. In 2015, a groundbreaking class action lawsuit was filed on behalf of more than 6,000 inmates, accusing the prison of violating constitutional rights through unsafe conditions, medical neglect, and extreme labor exploitation. Attorneys from the ACLU and Promise of Justice Initiative presented shocking evidence. Temperatures inside some cells exceeded 100 degrees Fahrenheit. Prisoners with chronic illnesses were denied medication, and dozens of elderly men were forced to work fields despite being physically unfit. Perhaps the most disturbing revelation came from the nurse logs, handwritten notes documenting untreated infections, heat strokes, and deaths that were never officially reported. These logs contradicted Angola's public health reports, revealing a pattern of falsified data designed to protect the prison's image. When investigators questioned staff, several admitted that they had been told to keep quiet for their own good. As the case gained national attention, cameras returned to Angola, this time not for the prison rodeo or faith-based programs, but for the truth. Former Warden Burl Kane, who had long presented Angola as a model of moral rehabilitation, resigned amid allegations of ethics violations and financial mismanagement. But Kane's departure did not cleanse the institution. The culture of fear and silence remained deeply embedded. In 2016, new reports emerged of inmate labor programs tied to state contracts, everything from furniture to agricultural products sold to government agencies. Prisoners earned between 2 and 20 cents an hour. When questioned, officials called it rehabilitation through work. Critics called it what it was, modern-day slavery. One journalist for The Guardian wrote, "Angola is the perfect circle of America's past and present, where the descendants of slaves labor on the same land for pennies, under the threat of the same whip." The Angola Three surviving member, Albert Woodfox, finally walked free in 2016 after spending 43 years in solitary confinement, the longest period of isolation ever recorded in U.S. history. When he stepped outside those gates, blinking against the Louisiana sun, reporters asked what he felt. His answer was quiet, almost mournful. Freedom should never take this long. His memoir, Solitary, became a testament to human endurance and a damning account of systemic cruelty. But even as Angola's history reached global audiences, change inside came slowly. By 2019, inspections found that over 80% of the prison's population, mostly black men, still worked in field gangs under armed watch. Many lived in deteriorating dormitories with failing plumbing and infestations. Lawsuits continued to pile up, yet the machine turned on. For every reform, there was resistance. For every whistleblower, there was retaliation. In 2020, a new investigation exposed another layer: sexual abuse and cover-ups involving staff. Internal Affairs reports, leaked anonymously, described female officers coerced into silence and male inmates assaulted without accountability. The revelations reignited demands for federal intervention, echoing the same pleas made decades earlier by prisoners like Wallace and Woodfox. When the COVID-19 pandemic hit, Angola became a death trap. Overcrowded, under-equipped, and medically neglected, the prison saw a devastating wave of infections. Families received little information. Bodies were buried in unmarked graves on prison grounds. For many, it felt like history repeating itself, Angola consuming lives in silence while the outside world looked away. By 2023, parts of the prison had finally come under review by federal monitors. Reforms were promised: improved healthcare, reduced isolation, better oversight. But for those who had lived the horror, it was too late. Angola's legacy was already written in blood and silence. One former inmate said in a documentary interview, "We built that place with our sweat. We picked its crops, cleaned its walls, and buried its dead." Angola don't need walls to keep you in. It lives inside you. The story of Angola is not just about one prison. It's a reflection of America's broken promise, that justice is equal, that rehabilitation is real, that punishment ends at the sentence. For many, Angola proved otherwise. It showed how easily humanity can vanish behind the word corrections. And though the gates of Angola still stand, creaking in the southern wind, its ghosts continue to whisper, not for vengeance, but for remembrance. Because the truth, once buried under layers of lies, will always find its way back to the surface.